Jesus had been mocked, beaten, stripped, scourged, crown of thorns placed on his head, spat upon, beaten with rods, mocked, then stripped again and made ready to place his body on the cross while soldiers gambled for his clothes. He would be fully exposed to a bloodthirsty mob, and he would die an agonizing death. And his words were simple, but hard and profound. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Let those words settle into you again for a minute. Think about them. The situation in which they were said, the one who said it. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing. I don't know about you, but I don't know of any more gracious, merciful, kind, forgiving words under such duress have ever been spoken. How could Jesus forgive those who were so mean, cruel, and hateful? Where does such mercy live? And surely, such love, grace, and mercy is impossible and not required of us. Is it? Hi, I'm Phil Ware. Welcome to ToGather. It's the longer version of Verse of the Day on Sunday. And I'm glad you're here. We're dealing with an incredibly important theme and message today. We are called to receive and be a blessing. Let's be wonderstruck at what Jesus said. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. It's like lightning has struck earth. And when it happens to us, we hear the thunder rumble from a nearby strike as it rumbles away from us. But sometimes we hear a faraway strike, and the echo rumbles toward us. In this story, we hear the echo of Jesus' forgiveness, the words on the cross that come to us across the centuries. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And those words reverberate within us, reminding us that the principles behind Jesus saying these words should be remembered, revived, and repeated. They set the agenda for us as Jesus' disciples when we're in difficult, painful, unfair, unjust circumstances. Earlier in Jesus' ministry, he had taught us, his disciples, this principle when he said, bless those who curse you and pray for those who mistreat you. But lest we water down those hard, clear, biting words of command in the face of difficult challenges, we're to be gracious. Notice the context, the teaching around which Jesus surrounds this statement. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, don't withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what belongs to you, do not demand it back. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners expecting to be repaid in full. But Love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great and you will be children of the Most High, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Be merciful, just as your Father is merciful. Yes. Wow. You can feel the thunder roll right into our hearts and convict us where we are. And it also puts a spin on a familiar saying, doesn't it? When put in its context, the golden rule is not some candy-coated saying to be dressed up with pretty flowers and hung on the wall in our den or kitchen. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you are the hard words of redemptive forgiveness in the face of unfairness, agony, and mistreatment. Jesus' words in this section, just like His words on the cross, Father, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing, are our marching orders. They're what we're called to live. We can't dismiss ourselves from this call of Jesus and His example. In fact, Peter would say it to those that were being mistreated in a time of persecution. To this you were called because Jesus suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in His steps. But Peter wasn't the only apostle to point to this. In the middle of a letter to the church in Ephesus, and probably a letter that was to be circulated all over Asia Minor, Paul reached back and recalled this principle. It's his way of saying, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. Follow Jesus' example of forgiveness in everyday life. He doesn't want us to dismiss it or let it go or water it down. He says in Ephesians, get rid of all bitterness, rage, and anger, brawling and slander, along with every form of malice. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Follow God's example. Do it as dearly beloved children, and walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave Himself up as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. Ouch. Jesus is serious about this forgiveness stuff. He's serious about our giving to others what they need, whether they deserve it or not. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Many of us would like to kind of water this down and say, this is for my everyday messes. Those slights, those unfair days that I'm treated in unkind ways by those above me at the office, or by those across the table from me in my family, or by those that are my friends who don't live up to the same standards of loyalty I do. And most certainly, this principle and the context of this principle come to us, and therefore those moments of everyday, always pain, slights, unfairnesses. Yes, they are for those. But we must not let them stop there. Instead, we must let the principle of Jesus infuse, permeate, and reach into every crevice and cranny and nook in our hearts. The thunder from those far hills in Jerusalem, Father, forgive them, they don't know what they're doing, should rumble all the way to us and convict us. I want to leave you with two principles. The first one is found with the Apostle Peter's words to a group of Christians facing imminent persecution. 1 Peter 3 in verses 8 and 9. He says, finally, All of you be like-minded, be sympathetic, love one another, be compassionate and humble. Do not repay evil or insult with insult, but on the contrary, repay evil with a blessing, because to this you were called, that you may inherit a blessing. He goes on in a few verses farther down in the chapter, and he says, "For it is better, if it is God's will, to suffer for doing good than for doing evil." That's unfair. A lot of life is unfair. The cross was unfair. The things that Jesus suffered were grossly unjust and unfair. But life is full of that. And so Jesus said, "Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing." The second reason has to do with Stephen, who lives out the example of Jesus in his own life. He is being stoned to death by large stones that come and crush parts of his body, one of the most agonizing ways to die. Pain, 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 crunch, break, bruise, batter, hemorrhage. Meanwhile, you feel the suffocating weight of the stones as they mound up upon you. Stephen faced this crushing weight, and he turns and looks at the crowd, those that are mocking him, angry, hate-filled, and he repeats the words of Jesus, "Father, don't hold these actions against them." Stephen relives the example of Jesus. And as Peter had said, even if we suffer unjustly, we do so graciously because we were called to inherit a blessing. We are a people that are called to bless. And Stephen's life was not wasted. God used it to open the door to the Samaritans and put a splinter in the heart of the Apostle Paul, so that when Jesus confronted him, Paul realized the depth of his sin, could say, "I'm the greatest of all sinners," and gave his life to taking the gospel to Gentiles. Until Stephen, Samaritans and Gentiles were left out. So he blessed, but he also inherited a blessing. From Stephen, we learn of what we see later in the book of Revelation, that martyrs go directly into the presence of God. And so as he's dying, he says, "I see the Son of Man in his glory at the Father's throne." And he steps into the presence of God. Jesus' words are hard words. We're called to not return evil for evil. We're not to return insult for insult. We're not to return violence for violence, but we're to forgive and to make that forgiveness as much as possible something redemptive. Now, in previous weeks, you've seen me show a picture of Botham John, a Christian young man that was a worship leader at two different churches in the area of Dallas-Fort Worth where I live. And he was killed in his own apartment eating ice cream by an off-duty cop who shot him. He lost his life needlessly. Some of the reasons for that have to do with the training that the police officer had received. Some of it had to do with her being overly tired from working extraordinarily long shifts. Some of it had to do with her being in a hurry to go spend the night with her boyfriend. But no matter what the reason, Botham's family had a right to be angry and to seek vengeance. They were angry. they were crushed. But they didn't seek vengeance, they sought justice. And so Brant, Botham's brother, during the sentencing, went up and hugged the person that had taken his brother's life and forgave her and talked to her very privately for a minute or two. Some people were shocked. Some people were angry. Some people thought it was great. But here's the point I want us to grab a hold of. Forgiveness is setting the imprisoned bird free and realizing we are that imprisoned bird. Alyssa, Botham's sister, Brant's sister, emphasized to those that were critics, please understand, this is something he felt he must do to honor God. But Botham's mom, Allison, and Botham's sister, who runs his nonprofit organization seeking different ways to do policing and different ways to handle situations, things like no-knock warrants and making sure everybody's wearing a camera when they engage with the public, and don't shoot first when you enter a house unless there's certainly a reason that suggests they are armed and dangerous. Some of those reforms, and then equal justice for all people regardless of race. They're continuing to push for those. They're not out for revenge. They are out to redeem the system. And when we look at the New Testament, we learn that the things that Peter and Paul said, based on what Jesus said and did, are things that we're called to practice too. But in the middle of being forgiving and gracious and respectful, we also push for truth. We use all our rights under the law, just like Joseph and the Apostle Paul and many others did that were God's servants. And we look for what is fair retribution for the crimes that are done and leave revenge to God. Jesus challenges us, and he reminds us to bless those who curse us. Don't curse them, but instead pray for them, for all who mistreat us. Because ultimately our goal is not to get even, but to bring grace and redemption. Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. Yes, the life and death and principles of Jesus still thunder across the ages and convict our hearts to live for him. Until next week, God bless.